For over 4,500 years, the Great Pyramid of Giza has stood in the desert, watched by millions of eyes, walked through by millions of feet, photographed more times than almost any structure on Earth, and studied by more scientists than any other ancient monument in human history. You would think, after all that time, after all that attention, that there would be nothing left to find. Every corridor mapped, every chamber cataloged, every stone accounted for. And yet, in just the last few years, something extraordinary has been happening deep inside and deep beneath these monuments. Something that is forcing Egyptologists, physicists, and engineers to admit, on the record, that the most famous building on the planet is still hiding things from us. New scans, new instruments, new signals bouncing back from places no human being has set foot in for thousands of years, if ever. And what those signals are showing is either one of the most significant archaeological breakthroughs of the century, or one of the most controversial scientific disputes happening in archaeology right now. Possibly both at the same time. Because buried beneath and inside the Giza plateau, something is down there. The only real question left is what? Let's start with what is not in dispute. Because before we go anywhere near controversy, you need to understand just how much of this story is genuine, confirmed, peer-reviewed science, published in one of the most respected scientific journals on Earth. In 2017, a research collaboration working under a project known as Scan Pyramids used a technique borrowed directly from particle physics to look inside the Great Pyramid of Khufu without drilling, without damaging, without disturbing a single stone. The technique relies on subatomic particles called muons, created constantly, high above our heads, when cosmic rays from deep space collide with the Earth's atmosphere. Muons rain down on every square inch of the planet's surface every single second, and they have a very useful property for archaeologists. They pass through solid stone, but they are absorbed at different rates depending on how dense the material is. Send detectors into known chambers and tunnels deep inside a pyramid, let them sit and count moons passing through the stone above them for weeks at a time, and you can build up a kind of shadow image of what is solid rock and what is empty space. The exact same basic principle as an X-ray. Except instead of using a machine to generate the particles, you are using particles that fall from space for free, continuously, everywhere on Earth. It's worth pausing here to appreciate just how strange and elegant this method actually is, because it did not begin with archaeology in mind at all. Muon detection, sometimes called Muon tomography, was pioneered decades earlier by physicists studying entirely different problems, including, famously, an attempt in the 1960s to search for hidden chambers inside a different Egyptian pyramid using cosmic ray equipment, an experiment that, at the time, found nothing conclusive but planted the seed for everything that followed. Decades later, improvements in detector sensitivity, data processing, and statistical modeling finally made it possible to take that same basic idea, counting the invisible rain of subatomic particles falling from deep space, and turn it into a genuinely precise imaging tool. Detectors were placed in several known locations, within and beneath the pyramid, including the base and an existing internal chamber, and left running for weeks, patiently accumulating millions of individual muon detections. Because muons are absorbed slightly more by dense solid stone and pass through open air with far less resistance, comparing the detection rates from different vantage points allows researchers to essentially triangulate where the stone is thinner than it should be, which in a 4,500-year-old solid limestone monument means only one thing: empty space. It is a slow, patient, statistical process, nothing like the instant visual result of a camera or a conventional X-ray. It can take weeks of continuous data collection before a hidden feature even becomes statistically distinguishable from background noise. But that patience is exactly what makes the results trustworthy. This is not a flashy, instant reveal. It is grinding, methodical physics, the kind that takes months to produce a result. And that slowness is part of why the scientific community treated the eventual discovery so seriously. What that team found stunned the entire field. Hidden directly above the pyramid's Grand Gallery, one of the most architecturally sophisticated spaces inside the entire monument, sat a previously unknown void, at least 30 meters long, roughly comparable in size to the Grand Gallery itself. This was not a crack. This was not a crawl space. This was a significant, deliberately proportioned empty chamber that no living person had ever entered, sealed inside solid limestone for approximately 4,500 years, and completely invisible to every archaeologist who had ever walked those corridors, because it was never connected to any known passage. The discovery, at the time, was the first major new internal structure identified inside the Great Pyramid since the 19th century. Let that sink in for a second. For over 100 years, nobody had found anything new inside this building. And then cosmic ray particles, falling constantly from deep space, exposed something that generations of archaeologists walking those same halls had never even suspected was there. The 2017 void was only the opening move. In 2023, the same broader Scan Pyramids research effort announced a second major discovery, an actual corridor, This one located near the pyramid's original north-facing entrance, roughly 30 feet long, hidden directly behind the chevron-shaped stone blocks that visitors have walked past for generations, without any idea what sat just inches away on the other side of that limestone. That corridor discovery was significant for a very specific reason. It proved that the pyramid's interior architecture still held genuine, previously unmapped features close to the surface, not just deep, isolated pockets far from any known passage. It also gave researchers a physical way in. Once a real physically accessible corridor had been confirmed and partially explored, it became possible to send small robotic devices further along it than any human body safely could, past narrow gaps, sharp turns, and centuries of settled dust and debris toward whatever lay beyond. That is precisely the passage that eventually led toward the sealed stone door we are about to discuss, the one whose contents, according to Hawass, may finally be revealed to the public this year. But here is where the story gets even more remarkable, because that 2017 discovery did not close the book. It opened an entirely new chapter. According to a peer-reviewed study published this year in the journal Nature, 3 independent teams of physicists, using 3 completely separate detection technologies, have now confirmed the existence of that hidden void using entirely different methods, cross-validating the original Muon findings with new, more precise data. This is exactly how serious science is supposed to work. One team finds something extraordinary. Instead of taking their word for it, other teams, using different equipment and different techniques, go back and check for themselves. And in this case, all 3 came back with the same answer. Something really is up there, sealed away, exactly where the original scans said it would be. What makes this even more compelling is what happened next. Researchers deployed a small robotic probe, capable of navigating into an existing interior corridor that leads toward this sealed region. And at the end of that corridor, the robot's cameras revealed something that should make the hair on your arm stand up. A stone door, sealed, untouched, sitting at the end of a passage that had never been explored by human beings or machines until this exact moment. According to Zahi Hawass, Egypt's former Minister of Antiquities and one of the most prominent Egyptologists in the world, what lies behind that door is expected to be disclosed sometime this year. As of right now, while you are listening to this, there is a genuine possibility that archaeologists are on the verge of opening a sealed doorway inside the Great Pyramid of Giza that has not been touched since the pyramid was built, and the contents of whatever lies behind it have not yet been made public. Think about the timeline here for a moment, because it matters. The Great Pyramid was constructed under the reign of the pharaoh Khufu, somewhere between roughly 2509 and 2483 BC, built from an estimated 2.3 million individual limestone blocks, each one quarried, transported, and precisely set in place using tools and techniques that experts are still debating the full details of today. That means this sealed doorway, this untouched threshold, discovered by a small robot crawling through a passage no person has ever walked, has been sitting in exact silence and exact darkness for roughly 4,500 years. It was sealed before the construction of Stonehenge was finished. It was sealed before writing had spread to most of the ancient world. It was sealed while woolly mammoths may still have been alive in isolated pockets of the Siberian Arctic. And it has remained completely undisturbed, completely unknown, for the entire span of recorded human civilization, right up until a small camera on the end of a robotic probe caught sight of it in the beam of its own light. And here is the part of this story that keeps even veteran Egyptologists up at night. Nobody, not Hawass, not the physicists behind the Nature study, not the engineers who built the robotic probe, actually knows what the 30-meter void above the Grand Gallery was originally built for. Every other major internal feature of the Great Pyramid has some proposed structural or ceremonial explanation. The Grand Gallery itself is generally understood as a monumental ascending passage, likely serving both a structural function in distributing the immense weight of stone above the king's chamber and a ceremonial role in the funerary procession. The relieving chambers above the king's chamber, discovered in the 19th century, are widely interpreted as engineering solutions designed to redirect crushing weight away from the ceiling of the chamber below, preventing collapse. But this newly confirmed void does not obviously fit either category. It is not positioned to serve a clear structural weight-bearing purpose the way the relieving chambers do, and it has no known connection to any ceremonial passage or burial space. It simply exists, sealed, symmetrical, deliberately proportioned, comparable in scale to one of the most important spaces inside the entire monument, for a purpose that remains, as of this recording, completely unexplained. That is precisely why the sealed stone door found at the end of the newly explored corridor matters so much. It may be the only realistic path left to actually reach that mysterious space and finally learn, after 4,500 years of silence, exactly what the pyramid's original architects intended it for. Now, while all of this has been unfolding inside the Great Pyramid of Khufu, a separate and equally significant investigation has been happening at the third and smallest of the three main pyramids at Giza, the Pyramid of Menkaure. Researchers working within the same Scan Pyramids framework, this time a collaboration between Cairo University and the Technical University of Munich, turned their instruments toward the pyramid's eastern face, a section that has puzzled archaeologists for a very long time. Unlike most of the surrounding stonework, a section of granite blocks along that eastern facade, roughly 4 meters high and 6 meters wide, is unusually smooth and polished, a finish that, at this site, has previously only been seen surrounding the pyramid's known entrance on the northern side. That kind of detail does not happen by accident in ancient Egyptian construction. Polished granite finishing was reserved for specific, deliberate architectural purposes, and finding it in a location with no known opening immediately raised an obvious question. Was there a second, undiscovered entrance hiding behind that smooth stone? To find out, researchers combined 3 different non-invasive scanning technologies: ground-penetrating radar, ultrasound, and a technique called electrical resistivity tomography, which measures how electrical currents move differently through solid rock compared to hollow, air-filled space. All 3 methods, applied independently, converged on the same conclusion. Behind that unusually polished granite facade sit 2 distinct air-filled voids, sitting at shallow depths of just a few feet behind the outer stone. One measures roughly 3 feet tall and just under 5 feet wide. The other is slightly smaller. Christian Gross, a professor of non-destructive testing involved in the research, has stated plainly that this discovery follows directly on the heels of the significant validation of a hidden corridor inside the Pyramid of Khufu in 2023. And that the methodology his team has developed allows extremely precise conclusions about a pyramid's interior without ever risking damage to it. The hypothesis of a second, previously unknown entrance into the Menkaure pyramid is now considered genuinely plausible by the research team, and these findings represent a significant step toward confirming it. 2 of the 3 great pyramids at Giza, then, backed by peer-reviewed, methodologically transparent research using multiple independent scanning technologies, are now confirmed to be hiding sealed, unexplored internal spaces that nobody alive has ever entered. That is the confirmed, mainstream, peer-reviewed side of this story, and on its own, it would already be one of the most exciting developments in Egyptology in decades. But there is another thread running through the same period of time, one that has generated even more dramatic headlines, sparked far more public fascination, and triggered one of the fiercest scientific disputes in modern archaeology. And I want to walk you through it carefully and honestly, because this is where the story shifts from confirmed discovery into genuinely contested territory. And you deserve to hear both sides clearly, without anyone pretending the argument is settled when it is not. The center of this controversy is something called the Khafre Project, led by a small team of researchers, including Corrado Malanga of the University of Pisa and Filippo Biondi of the University of Strathclyde. Their tool of choice is a technique called synthetic aperture radar Doppler tomography, a method originally developed for an entirely different purpose. It was built to study volcanic activity in seismic zones, analyzing subtle vibrations in the Earth's surface and converting that vibration data into layered tomographic slices of what lies beneath. Biondi and his collaborators repurposed this volcanic monitoring technology and pointed it at the Giza Plateau, specifically targeting the area beneath the Pyramid of Khafre, the second largest of the 3 great pyramids. And according to their published claims, what they detected down there is almost unbelievable. 8 large, hollow, cylindrical structures descending an extraordinary distance beneath the surface, more than 600 meters down by the team's own figures, connected directly to the base of the pyramid itself. Beneath those cylindrical shafts, the team describes 5 stacked multi-level chamber structures, linked together by geometric passageways, along with 2 massive cube-shaped underground chambers, each reportedly 80 meters on a side. Their data further suggests a network of tunnels stretching roughly 2 kilometers, potentially linking structures beneath all 3 of the major pyramids at Giza into a single connected underground system. Researcher Filippo Biondi has described his own reaction to the data in almost disbelieving terms, saying he struggles to put into words just how significant he believes this discovery to be. Some supporters of the findings have gone further still, describing water channels resembling ancient pipeline systems, and a mysterious luminous structure detected with vibrational signatures, descriptions that edge toward genuinely fringe territory, including speculation linking the site to mythological underworld realms or an ancient energy grid, and proposals that these structures could predate the pyramids themselves by tens of thousands of years. Now, here's where I need to be completely straight with you, because this is exactly the kind of claim that spreads instantly across social media precisely because it sounds so thrilling, and exactly the kind of claim that responsible science requires enormous skepticism before accepting. The response from the mainstream archaeological and scientific community to the Khafre Project's findings has been swift, and in many cases, scathing. Dr. Zahi Hawass, the same prominent Egyptologist connected to the confirmed Khufu discoveries we discussed earlier, has publicly and repeatedly dismissed the Khafra project claims, calling them, in his own words, completely wrong, and in even blunter terms elsewhere, fake news. His position is direct and uncompromising. Nothing new of this scale lies beneath Giza, and the claims do not hold up to basic scrutiny, but the criticism does not stop at one prominent Egyptologist's personal objection. Radar specialists working entirely outside of Egyptology have raised serious technical concerns about the method itself. Professor Lawrence Conyers of the University of Denver, an expert in exactly this kind of subsurface radar imaging, has pointed out a fundamental physical limitation that the Khafra project's claims appear to ignore entirely. Synthetic aperture radar of this general type, he explains, typically penetrates only 1 to 2 meters into dry sand under realistic conditions, nowhere close to the hundreds of meters, let alone the full 2 kilometers, that the Khafra team's claims would require. On top of that physical limitation, critics point to the region's naturally high water table, which would cause any genuinely deep voids at Giza to flood, raising serious questions about whether cavernous, air-filled chambers could even exist that far beneath the surface in the first place. Critics have also raised pointed questions about the credentials of the team behind the claims, noting that one of the lead researchers has a background connected to unidentified aerial phenomena research, rather than mainstream archaeology or established radar geophysics. A detail that, fair or not, has fed considerable skepticism about how the underlying data has been interpreted and framed for the public. It is also worth understanding why claims like these find such fertile ground in the first place, because the idea that something vast and unexplained lies beneath the Giza Plateau is not new. For decades, a small but persistent community of alternative researchers and engineers has argued that the pyramid's true purpose has been misunderstood, pointing to the sheer scale and precision of the construction, the mathematical relationships some claim to find embedded in the pyramid's proportions, and the enduring mystery of exactly how ancient builders moved and positioned multi-ton blocks with the tools available to them. Engineer Christopher Dunn, for instance, proposed decades ago that the Great Pyramid may have functioned as a kind of ancient energy device rather than purely a tomb, a theory rejected by mainstream Egyptology, but one that has developed a dedicated following over the years. Supporters of the Khafra project's findings have explicitly connected their radar data to exactly this kind of theory, framing the newly claimed cylindrical shafts and chamber network as physical evidence, finally validating decades of speculation. That connection is precisely why the story spread so quickly once it reached social media and alternative history communities, and precisely why mainstream Egyptologists reacted so fast and so forcefully to contain it. When a claim arrives, already wrapped around a pre-existing belief system, with a passionate audience primed and ready to embrace it, the burden of proof does not go away. If anything, it gets heavier, because the incentive to interpret ambiguous data generously in a way that confirms what you already suspected becomes that much stronger on every side of the debate. None of that automatically makes the Khafra project's claims false. Being connected to a controversial prior theory is not by itself scientific disproof, any more than the confirmed Muon and Nature-published findings are automatically proven correct, simply because they came through more conventional academic channels. But it does mean this particular claim needs to clear an unusually high bar of independent replication before it can be treated as established fact. It's the same bar that the Khufu void had to clear when 3 separate teams, using 3 separate detection methods, converged on the same result before Nature agreed to publish it. As of right now, no equivalent independent replication of the Khafra project's specific findings, the 8 cylindrical shafts, the stacked chambers, the 2-kilometer tunnel network, has been published through that same rigorous peer review process. That absence does not settle the argument either way. It simply means that, unlike the confirmed Khufu and Menkaure discoveries, the Khafra claims currently exist in a kind of scientific limbo, publicly announced, passionately defended by their creators, forcefully disputed by established experts, and not yet independently verified by anyone standing outside either camp. So where does that leave us? It leaves us in a genuinely fascinating, genuinely unresolved place, and I think that is actually the most honest and most interesting way to tell this story. On one side, you have slow, methodical, peer-reviewed, multiply, cross-validated science, muon detectors and independent verification teams and robotic probes crawling towards sealed stone doors, published in one of the most rigorously reviewed scientific journals in existence, confirming real, physically verified voids inside 2 of the 3 Great Pyramids at Giza. On the other side, you have a dramatically more sweeping claim, an entire underground megastructure, kilometers of tunnels, cube-shaped chambers the size of city blocks, potentially predating the pyramids by tens of thousands of years, generated using a repurposed volcanic monitoring technique, publicly rejected by leading Egyptologists, and directly challenged on fundamental physical grounds by outside radar experts who specialize in exactly this kind of subsurface imaging. Both stories cannot be equally true. Either the confirmed, conservative, peer-reviewed findings represent the real extent of what is down there, sealed voids and hidden corridors and an unopened stone door whose contents we may learn about this very year. Or there really is something on a far larger, far stranger scale sitting beneath the entire Giza Plateau, and mainstream archaeology, for reasons ranging from professional caution to reputational risk to genuine scientific doubt about the method, simply is not ready to accept it yet. History does occasionally side with the outsider making the wild claim. It also, far more often, sides with the careful skeptics pointing out that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and that a technique built to watch volcanic tremors has not yet been proven capable of what its boldest supporters are now claiming it can see. What nobody on either side disputes is this. The Giza Plateau, after more than a century of intensive archaeological attention, after being one of the most thoroughly mapped, photographed, and studied sites on the entire planet, is still actively producing new, verified discoveries right now in real time. A 30-meter void above the Grand Gallery that nobody suspected existed until cosmic ray particles exposed it. A sealed stone door at the end of a corridor no human being had ever walked, found by a small robot. Its contents still unknown to the public as you listen to this. 2 air-filled voids behind an unusually polished granite facade on the Menkaure Pyramid, hinting at a second entrance nobody had confirmed in over 4,000 years. And now, layered on top of all of that confirmed activity, a bitter, unresolved headline generating dispute over whether something vastly larger, an entire underground network connecting all 3 pyramids, sits even deeper below, sparking arguments between physicists, radar specialists, and some of the most respected Egyptologists alive today. Whatever the final answer turns out to be, one thing is already certain. The Great Pyramid of Giza and its neighbors are not finished revealing themselves. After 4,500 years of silence, the ground beneath the most famous monuments on Earth is speaking again, through cosmic particles falling from space, through radar echoes bounced back from the desert floor, through the flickering camera feed of a small robot creeping toward a door that has not opened since before most of human history had even been written down. And that leaves us with a genuinely uncomfortable, genuinely thrilling question hanging in the air right now, one that nobody, not Hawass, not the physicists behind the confirmed nature study, not the researchers claiming a vast underground network beneath Khafra, can fully answer yet. What happens when that sealed stone door inside the Great Pyramid finally opens? Does it reveal a modest, empty chamber? A structural quirk of ancient engineering with no dramatic secret inside at all? Or does it reveal something that forces even the most cautious, most skeptical Egyptologists on Earth to admit that the wilder claims circulating about Giza were pointing at something real, just described imprecisely, filtered through a technique still being refined and a public hungry for revelation? Right now, in the year 2026, while millions of tourists still walk past these monuments every single day, taking photographs exactly like people have for over a century, teams of scientists are quietly working through some of the most sensitive, most consequential archaeological questions of our era, using tools that did not exist a generation ago, tools that let them see through solid stone the way an X-ray sees through skin. The Great Pyramid of Giza has already outlasted every civilization that has ever studied it. It has survived empires, wars, earthquakes, and thousands of years of relentless human curiosity. And after all of that, it is still keeping secrets. Somewhere beneath that limestone silhouette against the desert sky, behind a door that has not opened in 4,500 years, something is waiting. We are, right now, closer than we have ever been to finding out exactly what.